Welcome, welcome. Jeff Lerner here. Welcome to either my YouTube channel for our Millionaire Secrets interview series, or if you're hearing this on the Jeff Lerner Show, welcome to the podcast. Glad to be here with you for another sure to be really interesting, cool episode. And I say that not because of anything that I do, but I'm blessed to get to meet and interview really cool, interesting people. And today is no exception to that. Today, we're actually speaking with a gentleman named Greg Potapenko, who I was fortunate to get to meet at an event. I guess it's been maybe a couple months. It was a Funnel Hacking Live event in Nashville, Tennessee. And Greg and I, we were actually backstage in an area for people that were basically waiting to get a certain award. And it was a pretty cool crowd to get to mingle with. And Greg and I just randomly happened to be standing next to each other, started talking. And I sort of instantly recognized, man, this is a very cool, interesting person that I would love to stay connected with and potentially talk more to and feature. And so now here we are. Greg has a really amazing story that we're going to get into, and I think can provide a ton of value to all of you guys out there who are wondering more about, man, is this real? Can I do this? Is this new economy, digital, entrepreneurship thing? Like, what is it all about? And can it be real for me? Greg and I are going to get into that and how very real it is. And you're going to get to hear his amazing story. So let's get into it with Greg Potapenko. Okay, so here we are. Greg, come on out, man, and say hello to ENTRE Nation.
Hello, ENTRE Nation. Greg here, and thank you, Jeff, for such a wonderful intro. I'm really glad I met you in Nashville. It seems like yesterday, but it's been over 2 months, actually. And I think we started talking something around the keto diet at the coffee table. And little by little, we agreed to meet on Zoom and do this interview. So here I am.
Yeah, that's right. You're exactly right. It was around the keto diet. And that's one of the things I think that stood out to me. I'm a big believer that the skills that we learn and sort of the life that, guys like you and I have chosen is meant to be a stepping stone into a robust and sort of full stack set of options in life around physical, around, not just our professional lives, but our physical lives, our personal lives. By choosing the vocations that we have, we create a whole set of options for ourselves because we free up a lot of time and we create resources, and we're not, basically stuck in the 9-to-5 cookie cutter. And I find that there are a lot of really interesting conversations to be had, basically with people who have enough time. I hate to say it like this, maybe sound like kind of a jerky way to say it, but it takes time to be interesting. You know what I mean? Like if you're stuck spending 14 hours a day just making a living and surviving and trading time for money, it's like hard to be into really interesting, cool stuff. It's hard to be into experimenting with yourself dietarily and experimenting with, constant personal growth and acquiring new knowledge and just, I don't know, man. I find so many interesting conversations happen when I meet fellow digital entrepreneurs because we have enough time to be interesting and to be interested in interesting things. And so, I guess I'm saying that to say that, like, you and I got into a whole conversation. We probably talked for 30 minutes before we ever got into anything to do with digital marketing about ketogenic dieting. And I know that you're an athlete. And, if I remember the conversation, we were talking about how keto impacts different types of athletic endeavors. And, it's just cool. I guess my point is, you go to an event like that and you think that the thing that you have in common is like the fact that you're all internet marketers. But in fact, what you really have in common is so many other things because of the lifestyle that you've chosen that allows you to be into a lot of other things that most people can't be into because they just don't have the time.
Yeah, I would tend to agree for sure. There's a lot of flexibility and freedom that comes with, this industry. But on the flip side, I know a lot of digital marketers who are super geeked out on digital marketing. They can do it for 18 hours a day, and that's all they do, and that's all they talk about. So there are also people who work quote unquote regular jobs, long hours, yet they still do something on the side that's like super remarkable, and that's either in the triathlon community or something else. Or even I'm a member of the Army Reserve, which is kind of like the U.S. National Guard.
Okay.
There's a lot of people whose second career is the military. So they have a day job and then they have a night/weekend job in the Army. And, it is hard, like you said, but it is definitely possible to have more than just like a day job and then a 6-pack of beer and a hockey game.
Yeah. So actually it's interesting you say that because, and I appreciate that you're saying it that way, because you're right. It's not an either or. It's not like as simple as cutting the world and saying, well, these are the freelancer type people over here who have flexibility. And so they're the ones that are into all the cool stuff. And then these are the 9-to-5ers over here, and they're all stuck in the cookie cutter and they don't do anything cool. You're right. It's not nearly that simple. Yeah. The reality is freedom is kind of a privilege. And it's, the flexibility, like you say, there's people that are, have digital marketing businesses that maybe pay them a lot of money and provide them a lot of flexibility. And it's almost like they almost abuse that privilege because they don't do anything else with it. Meanwhile, you have, let's call them 9-to-5ers who still manage to run triathlons, like you said, or serve in the, part-time in the military they probably have an abundance of discipline that allows them to tend to their responsibilities and still also tend to their passions or their interests. And I guess the reason I think that I was drawn to you is because you seem to be like me, someone who's committed to doing both, which is having that discipline that it would require to balance the 9-to-5, but also having that freedom and flexibility that comes with the digital marketing lifestyle and saying, hey, if I do both of those things, then I get the best of both worlds. Imagine what I can do then, right?
Yeah, like Jocko says, discipline equals freedom.
Yes, freedom through discipline. Yes, I think I say that like 5 times a week to someone. And I'm a big Jocko guy. I noticed on your, I don't remember if it was on your business site or your LinkedIn or your Instagram. I think it was your Instagram. You had calm is contagious. You had some Navy SEAL wisdom. I love studying the SEALs. And you clearly do too.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few guys in the Canadian Special Forces community, and I have actually met Jocko personally once at a military influencer conference and spoke to him for like 2 minutes. I actually have a photo with him on the Instagram too.
Cool.
And a few other former or current special operators, and they're definitely very interesting people to speak with, observe, and learn from, or read books like David Goggins. I read his book. I read all of Jocko's books. Mark Devine with his Unbeatable Mind. Listen to his podcast often.
I think that's what's interesting to me is, there's a lot of, I think, actually, I don't know if it's a misunderstanding or an unfair stereotype about internet-based, entrepreneurs, which is that we're kind of like lazy. Because actually, I say it might actually be fair because, I've been to Affiliate Summit and there's, Affiliate Summit is kind of has like you get a feel for the culture, right? And to me, it feels like kind of an indulgent culture. Like people, they make a lot of money. They have these internet-based businesses. They're not having to trade time like most people. And it almost feels very indulgent. They party and they sleep late and they almost take it for granted. And maybe it's because I'm old. I feel old. I'm 41. I don't know if I'm older or not, but I'm like, no. Like, we have an opportunity here. Let's get up earlier and do more. And you seem to be that kind of guy to me. Like,
yeah, I've been to Affiliate Summit and other affiliate conferences. It's a little bit different vibe from even, let's say, Funnel Hacking Live or
Right.
some other conferences. I've been to non-marketing conferences as well. In my prior life, I've been to like Oracle Open World, which is like a big 70,000 conference for Oracle in San Francisco, and they party just as hard and they goof off too. So yeah, it's up to the individual person to choose what they're going to do with the newfound freedom and whether they're going to abuse it or enjoy it or then eventually get bored with it and do something productive. I think it's probably like a curve where at first you enjoy it and you party, and then after a while most people would get bored with that and figure out, okay, what else can I do? And maybe they grow as a person and they're looking for that. I think Alex Charfen calls it the call to contribution or contribution gap, where they feel like, okay, now I'm done with this. I need to do something at a higher level and serve more people. And yeah, in my opinion, that's the stages of entrepreneurial life that most people go through.
Yeah, I know Tony Robbins, he has his 6 core needs of personality. And he has 4, I guess he calls them needs of personality, and he has 2 spiritual needs, and his spiritual needs are growth and contribution. Mm-hmm. Growth is about, it seems to me the way he explains it, growth is about consuming knowledge or wisdom, call it, so that you can grow. And then contribution is about producing or giving back knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah. I know guys who were like popping bottles at Marquee 3-5 years ago, and now they're starting charities and doing community work. So yeah, that's it's.
So okay, so you've obviously, I mean, I'm looking just from the kind of, I've done a little bit of digging on you since we met, and you seem to have a pretty interesting background. But I suspect the real interesting stuff is between the lines, So what I see is that, as you mentioned, you've worked in the armed forces. I think have you worked in domestic law enforcement? I saw something about being a warrant officer.
That's my current rank in the military. It's,
that's okay. So that means in the military. See, I'm in the U.S. I don't know the terms. You're in Canada, right?
Yeah, it's a Canadian Armed Forces. I'm on the Infantry Reserve Regiment. We're a light infantry regiment, and I still am an acting company sergeant major. So we got about 80 people in my organization. And currently we have a lot of members starting to get spooled up for the domestic op for the COVID-19 response.
Right.
And we're all working remotely. So that's an interesting challenge. But, no, I haven't done any law enforcement.
No law enforcement. Okay. So you're in the military. You have a background also as a financial analyst.
Yeah, so maybe I should just start like in the very beginning. So when I was born in Russia, and I spent the first 16 years of my life there, and then 97 our family moved to Canada. So I was 16 at the time, and spent a couple of years in high school. And because I didn't know anybody, but I got a computer, I just got online and started reading forums and bulletin boards and IRC chats and all that, and I learned how to code HTML and like simple Perl and CGI scripts, and basically built my first website around 98. And actually it was in Russian, and was around a very popular topic at the time in Russia, and it actually went viral. I didn't know what viral was, but it got featured on like Russian national TV, blogs, newspapers. Couldn't monetize it. But it was a fun experience. And then I actually made first money online in 99 as well. It was basically companies would pay per click for banner advertising, kind of like AdSense these days. So I would basically figure out how to redirect traffic from like public bulletin boards, which are basically like huge link farms, and to get on top of the link list every day, and send clicks to my landing page where I would have banners embedded, and I would get paid per click. So I made, several grand when I was like 17. And then the advertisers figured out that clicks don't equal sales, so they implemented quality checks in the background. So you have to have a certain number of sales to clicks, and that earning stream kind of stopped. And I resumed the normal life. So joined the military, went on to university. So I served in the reserves in parallel to doing my university degree. I majored in finance. So that leads me to that financial analyst stage, where I did work on Bay Street here in Toronto, which is kind of like Wall Street in New York. This is our financial, heart. I worked in finance for about a year, and then I switched to a gold mining company. Worked there as a project management / business process improvement specialist. So that's how I got introduced to Oracle and all that. Spent some time in South America, working on different projects for the company there. Learned Spanish in the process, which was kind of cool. But around 2007, as we were expecting our first child, I realized that, started crunching the numbers, and I'm like, well, even though I work 2 jobs technically, it's still going to be difficult to afford like a home in Toronto, which is one of the higher priced cities in the world. And went back online, reading forums and talking to people, and basically found this affiliate marketing forum from the UK. And they were promoting financial offers using Google AdWords. So you'd have to build your own funnel and start sending Google Ads clicks to the funnel and generate leads. And they were paying very handsomely at the time. I remembered my 10-year-old knowledge of building websites and fired up my notepad and wrote my first financial lead gen website, figured out how to use AdWords, started running traffic, and lost $5,000. And that's where, most people would probably quit before spending the first dollar, or they would certainly quit when they lost $5,000. But I didn't, and next month I actually turned a profit, and things started looking for the better. But then it was 2008, so the financial crisis hit. So all of those high loan payouts went down to the toilet, and something that used to be 125 pounds per lead, a lot, became 20 pounds per lead. But still, I kept doing it, and first year, I made, I think, maybe $20,000. And next year things got a little better. I basically mirrored my corporate salary. And then I discovered other affiliate marketing forums and communities, and started learning more and more and more about it, and trying other things. So in a couple of years, I was actually probably earning my annual salary in a month. So after a while, I figured, well, what if I do this full time? And 2011, I actually went full time, and I've been full time since.
First of all, yes, I love that, because you lost $5,000 your first month and you didn't quit. I don't know how much you've done in like the education space, whether it's selling courses or selling training or doing actual coaching or doing your own trainings or anything, but obviously that's what I do a lot of. And it's the bane of my existence that people can't lose money without losing heart, because losing money is like, just like being an athlete. Like you lose and you gain. You lose energy and you gain excitement, and you lose calories but you gain strength, and you lose sweat but you rehydrate, and like you're always losing and winning and losing and giving and taking. And I mean, for me, I even a couple days ago, I was telling somebody, they were like, oh, tell me about this YouTube thing. And I was saying, well, I don't know right now. And I sort of said it casually, because to me, it's not a big thing, because it's just what you do. But I'm like, yeah, I think right now we're spending between, maybe $1,200 and $1,500 a day on YouTube ads or something. And I just said it.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm spending money on ads. And it's like, it's mind blowing to some people. And actually, I saw this on your Instagram. Now I'm remembering that when I perused your Instagram, you had a quote from Henry Ford that was one of the, I've never seen this quote, and it hit me like, I loved it. I grabbed it and I'm stealing it and I'm reposting it on my Instagram. I've got it on my list. And it was, the man who stops advertising to save money is like the man who stops his clock to save time.
Yeah.
That's so genius to me. That's such a brilliant way to capture what we're trying to say. But like, you have to give money to get money. And that's such a fundamentally difficult thing for most people to accept. And I'm curious why you think, what is it about your life or your background or your personality or how you were raised or whatever that calibrated you to be okay with that reality when so many people seem to struggle with it, which I think is maybe the biggest reason most people never turn the corner into doing this kind of thing in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, I mean, it's going to be a long answer, but I still hate losing money. Don't get me wrong. I still hate it.
Yeah, you're a financial analyst. It's not like you don't know, right?
Yeah, I almost became a CFA, by the way. So
okay.
I was doing a lot of things before I started marketing. I was, doing training to become the certified financial analyst, which is like one of the hardest financial designations. But going back on the topic of losing money, like, yeah, I mean, I still hate it. I still, whenever there's a bad day or like I look at my stats and I don't see trends that I like, it still hurts me.
Right.
I think you just become conditioned to it. Like you asked me, how do you deal with loss? Like at the time, I didn't take it as lightly as I would today. Like, today losing $5,000 to me is still going to be, a bad day for me. I probably would be disappointed, but it's a whole different story when that's kind of like your entire life savings, or if it's like a bonus, or $5,000 is a lot of money for a lot of people.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be 5,000. I mean, some people don't want to lose $50.
Agreed, absolutely.
They don't want to spend $50 to learn.
Yeah. So right now, like you're right, you're basically investing. I've even heard other agency owners, they deliberately use the word investing instead of spending. So instead of ad spend, they would say, how much are you investing in your,
right?
And that kind of sounds a little bit awkward, but I think it shifts the perspective a lot. So yeah, definitely in the world of media buying, ad spend is considered buying data that will enable you to optimize your campaign and to profit in the future. Now, there are cases where I've had ad network reps tell me, don't worry, you just blew $1,000. You're buying data. I'm like, but that data is crap. Like I can already see it. So, but yeah, it's conditioning and treating it slightly differently. It's like a little bit of mental accounting. Like I would probably hate more, let's say missing a flight and losing like, $500 than, missing a decimal point in my Google AdWords and blowing through $1,000 in 10 minutes. True story. It happened twice.
I believe it.
Yeah. It's just like that mental shift, how you're treating different money piles. It's actually called mental accounting that I studied as part of my CFA program. But yeah, I think it's just doing the reps and being conditioned that, okay, this quote unquote loss is actually an investment in order to gain something in the future, provided that you do something with it. You don't just stop.
Yeah, I love that you reference the semantics of investment versus spending. I love that the power of words. They say that if you get some percentage increase in conversions if you ask for people's autograph instead of their signature, and if you have people fill out agreements rather than contracts. And it's just funny how people work. And as sales and marketing professionals, we study this stuff, right? I mean, we know, because when we write copy, we have to make sure we achieve a desired result and we don't inhibit the desired result, and word choice matters. But I think internally, if you're anything like me, but once you really learn how much word choice matters with other people, you also realize how much word choice matters with yourself, right?
Yes, for sure.
And you learn to talk to yourself a certain way to produce a desired result from yourself. Do you do that? I can't be the only one who's that insane, right?
So interesting, because I just had a headspace meditation session this morning about exactly this, how people in their self-talk oftentimes are very, very hard on themselves, and even worse than to others. Like you are your own worst critic at all times. And I also read like Mark Divine about like positive self-talk, and that's one of the ways to cope with extreme stress, and that's how one of the tools to get through Hell Week and SEAL training, for instance, is the positive self-talk. So I've had both. So I still catch myself saying, like, I do something stupid, I'm like, you're fucking retard, right? Like, to myself, and that's supposed to be a no-no. But yeah, I still do it. But like, for example, when I did like some endurance events, and you're running a marathon or whatever, and your quads lock up, and you still have like 8K to go, then you have to go through those positive self-talk, kind of like, you can do this. My legs are made of iron. Whatever works for you. So I know both sides of it, and I'm still not perfect. I don't think I make a conscious effort of like saying, okay, like, good job, Greg, today. In fact, I've been also told by many outside observers that I'm very critical of myself and other people, and I'm very slow at giving praise. So I guess it comes from the inside. Like, if I don't praise myself enough, it's equally different to praise other people. So that's one of my things that I need to work on.
Have you? I kind of asked it without asking it, so now I'll just ask it. Do you have much experience with trying to impart what you know how to do to other people who may want what they see you as having, this kind of freedom and flexibility?
Yeah. So I remember that you alluded to being a coach, or so not in the coaching or selling a course guru capacity. So obviously I have to train my staff, right? So I have about a dozen people working for me. So definitely I coach and mentor and train them, or at least give them some training materials and point them in the right direction. Sometimes a book can teach something better than I can, and sometimes it's the other way around. I've also had to coach and mentor some friends. I've also been a member of a mentoring program for veterans transitioning out of the military and becoming an entrepreneur. So I've had one engagement in that capacity. So yeah, I have some experience, obviously not at scale.
Well, so okay, you referenced two things that I have, I'm very interested in knowing more about. One is, so coaching friends. I can say from my experience that, I get people all the time that I know on a regular basis in my day-to-day life saying, what do you do? You sure seem to have a cool life. You get to travel, you're home, how does it work? And it's like, I get this very real sense that it doesn't matter what I respond with. I mean, and almost 100% of the time, I don't think I've ever, actually, there's only one person, no, maybe two people out of maybe 100 I can think of who I ever feel like have taken any answer that I've given to those types of questions and actually gone and tried to do something with it. And actually one of them is a pastor who also has local business clients that he does marketing for. And I don't know how much he makes as a pastor, but I suspect he makes as much or more helping a few local clients than he does with his pastoral work. And the other is a friend of mine who is a real estate agent who's used a lot of online marketing to become, one of the fastest results producing realtors in his market. So those are the two guys, but that's probably out of 100. So let's say there's 98 who've just kind of gone one ear, in one ear, out the other, smile and nod, and, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay. Right. So I'm curious your experience of trying to explain to friends, like, what exactly we do with our lives and how it works.
I can't say that 100 people ask me, because it so happens that a lot of my friends now are from the marketing industry, and there were people like from the military or just from back from university days or whatever that would ask me occasionally, like, hey, I see you have a different lifestyle, why don't you teach me what you know? And like I said, I would send them the materials that I used or that I would think would be appropriate at the time. And sometimes I would sit down with them and show them. It's not for everyone, I guess. Some people just want to not take the risk, or maybe they need to be told what to do. There is probably a reason why, there's the 1% that kind of moves the needle, and people like, Elon Musk and Henry Ford, and then there's people who help them execute on their vision. There's people who are excellent at executing, and there's people who are excellent at planning and generating ideas, and we need both.
And you use that word excellent, and you have to know that with me, that word is a very loaded word because I use it so much in my training. I basically say there's only two kinds of people in this world. There's excellent and there's average. There's only two kinds of lives in this world. There's awesome or excellent, and there's average. Even when I talk about my sort of taxonomy of life, the physical, personal, and professional categories of life, I basically refer to those as areas of excellence that you can strive for, but most people don't. And you said the 1%, and I would say, there's 1% who are innovators and visionaries and idea people, but there's also 1% who are executors and operators. But even within that, there's 1% of each, and then there's 99% of everybody else. And so, I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, we're the 1%, and then there's the 1% who are more just operators, because even the operators have a 1%. But then there's a 99% of both categories. And, what I know statistically is that for people who get into our type of business, and I won't pretend to know everything about your business. I know that it seems like you've done affiliate marketing. It seems like you have some kind of an agency consulting business. And I think you mentioned at one point, you've done some e-commerce type of marketing. Yep. I know that you're a, ClickFunnels, 2 Comma Club award winner. Like, you're in the top 1% of our industry, right? And most people aren't. And that's, the intent of if I had to say, why did I start a show? Why did I start interviewing people on YouTube? Why did I create a podcast? Why do I bother to do any of this relatively time-consuming part of my life that I don't actually have to do as a part of my business? Yeah, I would say it's because I'm trying to get to the core of one basic question, which is, why is it that some people do and other people don't, when so many say they want to?
Yeah, that's a fundamental philosophical question. And just to go back on what we said earlier, I don't know what the exact ratio is. Is it 1%? Is it 10?
Right.
80, 20? It's probably a normal distribution. I don't know. But there's definitely a group of people who are better at certain things than others. And as to the question why, in my experience, I guess it goes back to the beginning of our interview, it's a lot of that grit and perseverance. Some people are, they're gifted or talented and everything comes easy to them. That's probably an exception rather than the rule. And most people just achieve something from putting in the work and, sucking it up, embracing the suck, as they say. Yeah. Failing, learning, iterating, improving, and not everybody is cut out for that. Some people like comfort, or they're uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And, that's why.
Are you uncomfortable with being comfortable?
It's a constant battle, because sometimes there has been periods in my life where I look back and I'm like, yeah, I've been slacking off. I've been just kind of resting on my laurels a bit, or just coasting, definitely. And sometimes it's one area of life, sometimes it's the other. And yeah, I don't think everybody is perfect every single day, although maybe Goggins is. But
Yeah, that guy's pretty intense. I got to give it to him. I've read that book.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, it's just like you gotta catch yourself slacking off and say, hey, you can do better, you can do more, and get out there and do it. And am I comfortable with being uncomfortable? Yes and no. I mean, like, I think it's the anticipation of being uncomfortable that's worse than being uncomfortable, because I can relate to like doing the Ironman 70.3 or something like, while you wait to get into that ice cold water and you are thinking, oh man, like it's going to be freezing cold, it's going to suck, or shit, like I got to still run a half a marathon after all this. But once you're in it, once you're in that zone, then it's okay. Same thing like in the military a couple of years ago, I had to do this like really, really difficult demanding course, which is like a month long. We lost like 40% of the class throughout the month, but it was the anticipation of it, of what's going to happen, that was worse than what was actually happening. And I find that that's probably why, going back to our earlier questions, why people are afraid of losing that money, why people are afraid of making that first step. It's the anticipation of, oh my God, it's going to suck, that a lot of people can't overcome. Because once you start doing it, and even though it may suck, it's still actually not so bad.
So it seems like you might be touching on kind of a cluster of principles around taking action. People, Jack Ma has a famous, although probably fairly offensive quote to a lot of people about how poor people are the worst people to do business with. They're super skeptical. They don't take action. Everything's a scam. Everything's bad. They give you a million reasons why they can't. And at the end of the quote, he says, basically, they're poor because their whole life is about waiting. They're always waiting. And, and then we have these sayings like, ready, fire, aim. Successful people are ready, fire, aim. Success loves speed. How massive is your action? It's all about go, right? Just go. And it sounds like what you're saying is the enemy of go is that anticipation. That a lot of failure happens in the period before somebody even starts. Well, yeah, right?
Like if you quit, you fail automatically, right? Like that's.
And some people quit, they just don't start. And exactly. Again, I'm trying to get to the heart of like, because I for me, I started doing these videos online in the fall of 2018 is when I started putting videos out. I started with Facebook Lives, and then I started doing YouTube videos. And I'm just going out to the world being like, hey, you can do this. I did it. Greg did it. A bunch of other people did it. Like we're not from another planet. We're humans just like you. And we didn't necessarily have any advantages, but we just did it. And I started going out to the world saying that. And I get all these messages from people like, well, I want to do it. What do I do? And yet some of them I direct to courses, some of them I direct to videos, some of them I if I think they have some money, I might try to sell them my training. And then I get all these people that come in and buy my training. And it vexes me to no end that I don't know if it's 1% or 2% or 4% or what, but I know that it's 90% plus of people who say they want a certain result and they don't do it. And they don't go get it, and they don't stay in it long enough, and they don't work hard enough at it, and they don't burn enough calories, and they don't overcome enough frustration, and they don't bloody their knuckles enough to bust through. And I don't know, man, maybe I'm searching for something I'm never going to find. But when I meet someone like you who's not just accomplished at this, but you're an endurance athlete, you're in the military, you've achieved success across a number of fronts, I'm like, maybe you can help me get closer to this answer,
Well, I'm by no means perfect, and I look up to a lot of people who are miles and, leaps and bounds beyond anything that I can even imagine for myself. So I think, yeah.
I appreciate your humility.
Yeah, looking up to someone and having that mentor, whether a real mentor or a virtual mentor, like, it could be an author or a past president or leader, like Gandhi or Lincoln or whatever. That's huge, I think. And you putting yourself out there, bringing these speakers on board and using them and yourself as an example, saying this is what is possible. I think little by little, it's still chirping away at that like rock of disbelief.
Yeah.
That people just don't believe in themselves enough, or maybe they're stuck in that comfort zone. Like when I was like a new immigrant, we had no money, and it's not like we had to find food scraps. But yeah, life was tough. So I think pressure, that's what creates a diamond from the coal, they say. It helps. And it crushes a lot of people, but some people actually come out from underneath it as a winner. So extreme pressure can either crush you and destroy you, or if you got some grit to withstand it, you will come out better. And then you will use it as fuel to do something to get out of that situation and be better. And whether it's, learning something new, a new skill, and finding a new job, finding enough strength and courage to go out for that interview or for that business deal, or spend some money online to, buy Facebook ads or whatnot. Like, it's one way definitely is get into some sort of stress and pressure that will propel you into the right direction, but avoid getting crushed.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I'd like to hear, if you're comfortable kind of digging into the depths of your life, is take me back to a situation. I mean, you're talking about being an immigrant from Russia. I've heard Gary Vee talk a lot about being an immigrant from Belarus and his family and some of the hardships. Where you guys immigrated to Toronto?
Yeah, so we were living in Novosibirsk, which is in Siberia, and we immigrated straight to Toronto. So that's where.
So you're from You're not just from Russia. You're from Siberia.
Yeah, man.
That's where Russians send Russians when they want to make their life harder, right?
Yeah, back like 200 years ago. Yeah, that used to be the place for sure.
Yeah, and I'm a dumb American. We're super ignorant, and we generalize, and we put our foot in our mouths all the time. So. Dostoevsky is actually one of my favorite authors. I've read several of his books. And so that's when I think Russia, I literally go into like Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov. And so, which I realize is not now, it's like 100, 200 years ago. But
yeah, I found those boring because they were part of the mandatory curriculum for Russian literature class back in Russian school. And
okay.
I think that I may come back and reread them once I'm older, but at the time, for like a young 15-year-old person, they seem like, what the hell? They're so slow. There's no action.
It is slow.
What's going on?
I went through a weird existential phase in my like early 20s where I read like Camus and Dostoevsky and guys like that, Kierkegaard, and I was just real out there. But anyway,
so, read Erich Maria Remarque, the German guy.
Yeah, Remarque is All Quiet on the Western Front, right?
Yeah, and there are a few others. I had a period where I read all of his books, and it's this like gloomy World War One, World War Two limbo period where it's like, and he talks about I think it's called Shadows in Heaven. It's the German immigrants in New York. So there's a lot of things I can relate to.
Mm-hmm. So that coming from that background, who immigrated? Was it just you and your parents?
Yeah, so my mom, my dad, my sister, and I. Yeah.
Okay. And did your parents, I mean, I assume they had to come and try to find very traditional jobs, whatever they could get, right?
Yeah, so at the time in the 90s, like you would basically be allowed in if you had one of the, professions that would be in demand in Canada. So my parents were engineers by trade, but because of what happened in Russia, they weren't practicing engineering for 42 decades. So my dad was like an entrepreneur as well. Like he had a little manufacturing and a trade business. And during the crisis in the 90s, it all kind of imploded, and there was a lot of crime and, firefights in the city between different rival gangs. Like people were being gunned down in our apartment complexes and stuff. We had like SWAT teams chasing criminals. Jeez. By the way, the building we started to live in Toronto, I had this exactly the same thing happening. So, but anyway, so yeah, like,
dream, right?
so yeah, we came over and they were just trying to get whatever job they could, and we ran out of money. We brought with ourselves pretty quickly, and that brought a tremendous amount of stress on our family. And my father actually became sick, and I had to provide for the family for a few months. I basically took up first it was a assembly line job for $5 an hour, and then it was a gas station attendant for minimum wage. So just had to put food on the table at the age of like 17, and that's what I had to do. Thankfully, he recovered and they found a job. So they actually built a career eventually, but the first 3 years were really, really tough. But, I still finished school with good grades. I entered university. I joined the military. And I think working those kind of like quote unquote shit jobs helped me appreciate the difference between, different things you can do. Those are still okay jobs. Like, I'm not trying to look down on people who do them. I've done them all myself. So, but it definitely helps appreciate the difference, between being in a warm office with a computer versus standing on your feet for 10 hours with 2-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch.
Yeah. So did that experience, do you think that, or how do you think that impacted you later in terms of the risk tolerance and also the belief in yourself to be able to make the transition to being a full-time call it a digital lifestyle entrepreneur? How do you think that impacted where you ended up?
Actually brings me to another thought about, losing money and being comfortable with it. I think it's the confidence that you gain after repetitions and going through this many times that, yes, even though I lost money today, I'm going to make it back. Like, I think that confidence is similar to the confidence where it's like, worst case scenario, I can do this. I can be an assembly line worker again if I have to, and I can, pump gas, and I can do this worst case scenario. And in fact, funny anecdote, I was rereading 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss's book, on a plane ride from, I think I was coming back from Lima to San Francisco. I read through that chapter where he talks about this, like, what's the worst that can happen? A lot of people, they put off quitting their job, waiting for that next, milestone. Oh, I'm just going to wait for this bonus. I'm just going to wait for this, whatever. And they never do it. They keep finding reasons why they should wait. And I just literally fired up my laptop and typed out my resignation letter. And there was no internet on planes back then. And as soon as we landed, I fired off.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a bit of a dick move in retrospect, quitting over email, but it had to be done because otherwise I wouldn't have done it, at least not at the time.
Well, it seems to me you just re-said what we said earlier. Ready, fire, aim, success, love, speed. A lack of success is very often tied to waiting. You knew that you had to light the fuse or you never would, right?
Yeah, it just felt that way, at least at the time, that I would have to wait for my Christmas bonus that I actually forfeited. I would have to wait for whatever, that next Gucci trip that I was going to take on company's dime. I was actually traveling more in my corporate job than I was traveling in my business. I was flying business class everywhere, and it was pretty good in that regard. Well, at least it would seem to a lot of people. I'd still be away from family for 3-4 months a year, which is a lot. And I thank my family for putting up with that. But I actually want to touch on speed. So even though speed is important, but sometimes like you need to differentiate speed and haste. Because again, in the military, we have a couple of sayings like slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want to just like go into a situation guns blazing without a plan. I mean, if you get ambushed, yeah, but you still have a plan for what's going to happen when you get ambushed that you hopefully rehearsed before. But typically you want to have at least some sort of a planning session to make sure that you're going in with speed, but at least according to a plan and, using all the standard SOPs and procedures and stuff like that.
Well, that's another one of my favorite sayings. I've heard Jocko say it. I've heard it in multiple interviews with SEALs. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I totally agree. I mean, I look at what I've done, you know, about a year ago, I brought on a partner in an operations professional within my company. And we set some really big plans in motion, things that could not be rushed. You know, they take time. You know, what feels like a massive, almost like foundation on up overhauling of everything. And it had to be thorough. It had to be meticulous. And it was going to take a lot. It was going to take a lot of time. And it was very much for me a professional example of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. But at the same time, what I've learned is I still have to, even when you're involved in something that may take a year, and you know, we started on this a year ago, and we're just now getting to where I would say, frankly, if it weren't for COVID-19, we would be reaping the fruits of it right now. We may have to defer that a couple months, right? But I mean, basically, it's been a 12-month project. But if I hadn't woken up every single day with a burning sense of urgency that however slow the work may be, there's still no option to delay or to wait. If I hadn't had that urgency, then 1 year would have been 5 years, which probably would have been never.
Yeah.
And I think when you say slow is smooth, smooth is fast, I totally agree with that. But I think there are so many people in this world who in an effort to not make haste and not rush, they give themselves permission to back off. And you only have to back off a little bit to realize that 10 years have gone by and you didn't do jack shit, you know? And so I think it's a very fine line.
Yeah, you have to keep reminding yourself every day. And I don't know, like I still have the shiny object syndrome that a lot of people have, at least a lot of entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of things that I kind of wish I would have done, and I kept putting it off and off and off in favor of other things, though. It's not like I just put it off and went to watch Netflix. Yeah, no, definitely I can relate to that. But I'm very impatient, though. Like I want everything like now, and that sense of urgency that has been built into me, at least, you know, in the military. That's one of the big core values, a sense of urgency. That mining company actually had a sense of urgency as one of their core values. It's,
okay.
So I have it, you know, it's in my DNA. So, but I look back often, I'm like, oh my God, I actually accomplished quite a lot in the last whatever quarter or half a year. It always felt like we're failing or we're late. But then when you look back, in fact, if you have been doing the work, like, you know what, we actually ticked off a lot of check boxes and we got a lot accomplished, even though it didn't feel that way.
Well, I think that you know, my role. One of my favorite things about what I get to do with my life is I get to be around a very large number of really successful people, many that are far more successful than me, and I get to pick their brains, and I get to you know, not just extract information, but I get to try to go even deeper than that and really feel their energy and feel their vibration and just try to get to the heart of it. And I think that a universal attribute of really successful people is a perpetual low-grade dissatisfaction. That they always feel like they're behind. They always feel like they're running out of time. They always feel like they're you know, they are pretty hard on themselves. They're never satisfied with their performance. They always feel like they could do more or do better or go faster. And I've just accepted that, frankly, for me, based on observation of a lot of other people, the thing that I'm actually most afraid of now, one of the things I'm most afraid of is ever feeling too content.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because now I can be sure that I'm not the only one feeling that way. Yeah, it's a hard, I guess, personality trait to live with, because then you got to make sure that you're not overly too hard on yourself, like we said earlier, when you're just beating yourself up, and then as a result, you actually end up taking no action because you're beat up. But that slight dissatisfaction, that slight kind of oh, I'm running out of time feeling, yeah, that's very familiar to me for sure. Even now with this quarantine, like people are asking, hey, what do you do with all the free time? I'm like, what free time? I'm busier than ever because there's all the day-to-day stuff that I need to do. Plus, like, I want to help, I want to contribute, and I feel like I'm not doing enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this quarantine has been really interesting to see. It's been interesting, you know, people essentially have a built-in excuse now for anything.
Mm-hmm.
If they had a tendency towards laziness before, now they have a big excuse. If they had a big instinct to be charitable and to focus on contribution, now they have a big excuse to do more of that. And I'm using the term excuse. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know.
Yeah.
If people were really into spending time with their family before, now they have an excuse. It's like before we always felt like we kind of had to be more balanced. Essentially, we now have it's not an excuse, it's permission.
Mm-hmm.
We have permission to be more extreme or more imbalanced about whatever was important to us before. And you're right, there's a lot of people who are suddenly giving themselves permission to have all this free time. But that's all that is a manifestation of the fact that they weren't obsessed with being productive with their time before. Because if you're obsessed with being productive with your time, you're not going, oh, I have all this free time. You're going, oh, I have so much more to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel.
And that's how I feel.
It feels bad at the time where I'm like, well, I am with my kids 24/7, but I'm actually probably spending less time with them now than before this, ironically, and that's another thing I need to figure out how to improve on. Because I just kind of tend to fill my free time with work or, you know, working out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I do. I think it's hard. So actually, I'm glad you said that, and we can kind of riff on this for a second. So you're a dad, obviously. Mm-hmm. How many kids do you have?
3.
3 kids. I have 4. How old are they?
12, 9, and 2.
12, 9, and 2. Okay. So how do you kind of balance? I mean, given that you have, let's call it the extreme of flexibility in your life. In other words, if you want to be at a coffee shop, you can be at a coffee shop. If you want to be at home, you can be at home. If you want to be at an office, you can be in an office. Now you might have to have a laptop, and you might have to look at the laptop a decent amount of the time, but you basically you control where you go and who you go with, right?
To a certain extent. I mean, we're still like outside of the quarantine situation, we're still bound to, school routine because you have to get them ready for school, take them to daycare, pick them up, extracurricular activities in the evening, almost every night. Going to the gym. So yeah, it's still not like I can do whatever I want. I mean, I could technically,
though.
Yeah.
You could. It's just because you've chosen some other things as priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I could hire someone to drive them or whatever.
Right.
But it also, the routine helps with staying organized in a way. So, you have to wake up to get them out the door. Therefore, you cannot sleep in, or, you have to pick them up from school. So you cannot have a meeting at whatever hour. And routine helps in this situation today as well. We're still trying to, wake up at a normal time, go to bed at a normal time, work out at a certain time, and have meals. Routine helps. It's been proven, POW camps and any sort of situation like that, where that's the saving grace for people to maintain their sanity. So in a way, yes, I can do whatever I want, but I don't necessarily want to do whatever I want. I want to stick to a routine.
That's okay. I think that's a great insight, is that you can do whatever you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should. Mm-hmm. And in fact, doing whatever you want is probably the enemy in some cases of doing what you should, and it would be counterproductive.
Yeah, but before our call, I looked at the watch and I said, okay, I have 50 minutes. I can either do some work on the laptop or I can go outside for a run. I'm like, I'm going to go for a run. So that flexibility definitely is a lot better than, I have to be, at my workstation until 1700 hours, and then only then I can go for a run. And then maybe it will rain, and then you end up not going for a run, and therefore you miss your workout, and then you feel bad about it. beat yourself up. So
let's sort of leave off on this note. I'm going to ask you, if you would, you talked about being an immigrant. You talked about coming here and having to, get some, what we would call menial jobs at 16 or 17 years old to literally support your family. Actually, I'm evolving my question as I talk. You mentioned that your dad was sick, but eventually he was able to get back on his feet and start a career. But something you said to me, I want to come back to before we actually started the interview, is that at one point didn't you say you taught your dad how to do some affiliate marketing and some of the stuff that we do?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So a few years ago, he, obviously he's an entrepreneur at heart still.
Yeah.
Even though he had a day job, he's like, always looking, he's always hustling even to this day, like doing different handyman jobs or just, he knew that I was at the time online, full-time doing marketing, and just kind of asked me like whether I can show him, and maybe he can do something for me. And I basically taught him how to do Google AdWords advertising, and I had to supply the funnels and I had to do a lot of like the plumbing, but he within a couple of months was able to confidently navigate like this pretty advanced system and run search campaigns at scale, and he would profit 10 grand a month. That offer kind of went down after a couple of years, so there was a bit of a hiatus, and then a year ago he started again, and he's to this day is working away, writing ads, setting bids, managing campaigns, and he's doing well, and he's now 66. So
you got a 60-something-year-old, he had a day job, and he'd never done any online stuff before.
Nope.
And you basically trained him with one platform and got up to a 6-figure income level that you said he ran for a couple of years.
Yep. So they bought a house, all paid for, and actually not one platform, is two, because Microsoft Ads it's pretty much a carbon copy of Google AdWords that's lagging 2 years. Yeah. So he was managing 2 ad platforms and several campaigns at scale, and does so today.
Was that the most money he'd ever made in his life?
If not the most, then probably close. Like he had some good runs back in Russia for sure, and definitely compared to working a 9 to 5 in Canada, that is probably more than
right. So the reason I asked that is I'm not trying to pry into your private family life. I just again this endeavor for me is always about trying to show people how real and how achievable this stuff is for anyone. So, for a 60-something immigrant, day worker in Canada whose son showed him how to manage ad campaigns. And I'm, obviously I understand you showed him how to do it.
Yeah.
Not like he figured it out. He didn't just go buy an ad skills course. No. You showed him how to do it, but it's still fundamentally doable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And like I said, I've hired people in Toronto and remotely, like as freelancers, and without necessarily knowing what they need to know. And I was able to get them operating confidently and managing campaigns or creating funnels or whatever within a few short months. I think the key is a lot of people are confused. There's so much information out there; they don't know where to start. Like I have a gentleman who's we just had a call 2 days ago. He's a pretty successful financial advisor, but he wants to do affiliate marketing on the side. And he just bought a course online, almost got scammed by a freelancer who charged him $1,500 for a $10 WordPress template. I helped him to get his money back. But he's still, he spent a few bucks on Facebook and he had a couple of leads. So he's a few steps ahead of most of the people, but he's still very much confused because it's still part-time for him, and he he was looking for my guidance, like, what would you do? So I think if you take people by the hand and show them exactly what to do, more people would be successful. And actually, I have another evidence supporting that, because that first affiliate forum that I found in the UK in 2007, they basically had adopted a school system where they would basically give their members a blueprint, like A to B, how they should run these campaigns. Like, okay, build your funnel like this with examples. Make sure your ads are like that. Make sure, here are some suggestions for keywords. You have to use Google AdWords as your traffic source. So it was basically a blueprint given to them with the exact offer they need to run, the exact traffic source, and the exact funnel, which, in my opinion, pretty much the three constituents of any successful campaigns. Because you have to have all of these three things aligned.
Well, sorry, what were those three things? It was the ads.
The traffic, the funnel, and the offer, right? So that's essentially, if all of them align, you have a successful campaign. So, for instance, if you try to run that funnel on a pop-under traffic source, it's not going to convert. If you have an offer that's not good for that audience, it's not going to convert. Or if you have a shitty funnel, it's not going to convert. So they were pretty much giving you, or almost giving you, all those three things. Same thing I did with my dad. I gave him the exact funnel, the exact offer, the exact campaigns, and I got the ball rolling for him, and he was just able to take it over. Where people are getting stuck is probably like, what should I do? Should I learn Facebook, Google, native, email? Should I start a blog? Should I start a vlog? Should I podcast, YouTube? But
you just used a bunch of words that obviously are, they're second nature to us. I mean, you said pop under, you talked about search, you talked about offer, funnel, traffic source, I don't remember everything you just said, but there's a language, there's a vocabulary. It's no different than being a financial analyst. You talk about your internal rate of return, or your gross versus net margins, or, anything that's real has a vocabulary. And what I find is that some people, for some reason on the internet, if they heard what you just said, their response would be to say, this is all over my head, I can't do this. That doesn't make any sense, but there's something about the ethereal, intangible nature of the internet that puts people in a space, like I think you said, of disbelief. Disbelief in themselves, disbelief in the platform, distrust maybe, where then they respond to things that are very reasonable things, but they respond in what I think is an unreasonable way to say, well, this isn't right for me. I'm too stupid. It's over my head. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too whatever. I'm too married. I'm too single. I'm too gay. I'm too straight. I don't know. They seem to all think they're too much of something to just spend the time getting acclimated and recognizing that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and this is probably going to take some time.
Yeah, but I think us as educators and whatever, captains of the industry, whatever terminology you want to use, maybe need to do a better job of getting down on their level if they're afraid of these big words and whatnot. And I haven't bought too many courses lately, so I don't know how it is, but I think that approach of taking them by the hand and showing them exactly what needs to be done that works, gets them that small initial success that builds up their confidence in order to then be okay with, losing a little bit of money here and there, but be okay with trying something new, right? Because, if I imagine myself now trying to start without knowing anything, it'd be, like I said, overwhelmed. Like, where do I start? Which traffic source do I learn? Which offer to promote? Should I be an affiliate? Should I be a course creator? Should I be a coach?
Right. Well, I appreciate what you just said, because I think without knowing it, you just gave a reasonable endorsement of at least what I'm trying to do with ENTRE. So thank you for that. Is there anything that you would like my audience to know about you, a place you would like them to go follow you, maybe an offer you would like to make to them, a book you'd like them to read, anything that a link or someplace they can go to kind of follow you on your journey, or, whatever. I just feel free. This is an open platform for you to share whatever you feel.
Okay, yeah. So I I haven't been very public lately. Well, I've only started opening up like my life recently. I only got an Instagram account a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the nature of being an affiliate marketer. We used to be very secretive about what we do.
Oh, I know. And by the way, I did what you're describing a year and a half ago. That's when I started putting out all these videos. Yeah.
So my specialty, I'd like to say, like I thought, what is my quote unquote superpower? I think I'm probably superpower is Google AdWords because I've been doing it the longest. I spend the most money on the platform. Like I know other things. I know Facebook. I spent a couple of million there. I know a little bit of pop, native, display, mobile, whatever. But Google is probably my biggest skill that I can share. And I am planning to kind of open up my system, how I was able to teach my dad and my employees, sharing what I know. And I'm planning to put it into a program and release it, and hopefully it will help some people out, because I think there's been a lot of emphasis lately on Facebook advertising as the go-to source, and Google kind of fell to the wayside. But it's still one of the best traffic sources out there to know.
And for some businesses, it's vastly superior to Facebook.
Yeah, for some, especially that are search driven. Like, I mean, if you're locked out of your house and you're looking for a locksmith, you're not gonna go on Instagram or fire Facebook. You're gonna type into Google, find a locksmith in my area.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
So the nice thing about this format is we can add links anytime. So when you have that course ready, make sure you give us the link, and we'll pop it in the description for this video and on the show, on the podcast as well. I will simply encourage you too, as myself, somebody who was, I was an affiliate marketer and I owned an agency, both roles that kept me, either private or with no need to be public. And just in the last year and a half, having really gone public and started to create a lot more forward-facing content, I'll encourage you in that direction. I mean, it's been really powerful for my business.
Yeah, I started a Facebook group about AdWords. I can share a link with you later, and people can find me on Instagram.
I'd like to be in it personally, frankly. Yeah,
for sure. So I'll send you a link over. My Instagram and LinkedIn profile. It's also a good way of.
How much money would you say you've spent on AdWords in your career?
I'll tell you right now.
While you're looking that up, I'll say I got my start in 2008 on Google AdWords. Kind of same as you. I lost a bunch of money really fast, and I was going for broke, literally. And right before I hit the bottom, I finally popped a sale and was able to reload my account and kind of sprung from there. But AdWords is, in my first 18 months, most of my listeners know the story. I was able to pay off almost $500,000 of debt in my first 18 months online. And I did 95% of that revenue from Google AdWords marketing.
Yeah. So $12.2 million.
$12.2 million. So that's a healthy ad spend. Yeah. In fact, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about AdWords at some point.
For sure. Let's schedule a time and
for our business too. Cool. Well, Greg, thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. And, we'll obviously follow up and share with me any links. I can put them in the description for the show. And I just appreciate you sharing and being an open book, man. This has been great. And any final thoughts or comments for the audience?
In the words of my course officer on that hard course before he sent us off into the freezing plains in New Brunswick, Canada, he simply said, "You can do it." That's all I can say. You can do it, man. You can. I mean, honestly, that's the takeaway I hope from every one of these episodes, is that you can do it, but you have to do it. Yeah. Right? All right. Well, thank you, Greg. And thank you, Entre Nation. Appreciate everyone. And we will catch you on the next episode. Take care. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.